my sound okay? Oh, no, wait a minute. My sound, I don't have my headset in. So my sound probably is not okay until I get these in my ears, my microphone closer to my face. There we go. All right. I knew something was missing. Okay. So, as I said at the beginning, the Noble Eightfold Path that we're going to be exploring over these next 9 weeks is the fourth of the Four Noble Truths, which is the way to the cessation of suffering. So I have an image or metaphor of this path to share with you. Just imagine in your mind an 8-faced mountain rising to a single peak. There's a path circling the mountain, climbing higher with each round, a spiral path that culminates at the peak, where there is no longer any differentiation of the 8 faces of the mountainside. On top of this peak, there's a beacon of light which shines down on all sides of the mountain. The upper levels of the path are more fully bathed in the light than the lower levels nearer the starting point. But the whole path is illuminated. And the light acts as a guide to those climbing, illuminating and influencing the progress of those who are able to see it and understand its meaning. All facets of the mountain are being explored with each higher level in a process of integration which leads to liberation. Looked at from the top of the mountain, a bird's eye view, the mountain resembles a mandala with a beacon at the center and the spiral path cycling through the 8 sides or facets which radiate out from the center of the mandala. So this image represents to me the Eightfold Path, though in a limited way, of course, since images and words can only point to what's basically inexpressible and ultimately. The image also represents how the first limb or perfect vision is central in that it contains and permeates all of the other limbs. The perfect vision or view or understanding is the starting point at the base of the mountain, and it's also the peak at the top. So you could say that it permeates the whole mountain, both horizontally on the path circling the mountain and vertically as one of its facets along the side. Next week, we're going to hear more about perfect vision from Prasadachitta. Perfect vision is the first of the Noble Eightfold Path limbs. But I'm going to be referring to it quite a bit tonight as well. So this mountain image that I gave you is limited because in actuality, the path has no definite starting point, nor an ending point, ultimately. So we can say that our view and understanding in the present is where we start, because our views have a direct impact on how we live our lives. We all have views, and we need views. And some of these views serve us, and some of these views do not serve us. So what is important is that we have our attitudes, our actions, our thoughts, and our speech, and the consequences of these can affect our views in turn. So if we're receptive to evaluating our views, then we can shift when we realize that our views are not serving us or others well, or they're creating problems for us. And I'll be saying more about this later. Many times our views are held quite rigidly and even clung to, even if they're not serving our best interests. So the most pernicious of the views we hold are those of ourself. And there's much that can be said about this, and we'll be coming back to it over and over, I'm sure, through the course of this series. Just to say here that our fixed self-view is our greatest obstacle on this path. So we want to create conditions where that can be loosened a bit, and we can start to see more of ourselves as we let go of ourselves. That's a bit mysterious right now. So for those of us beginning to tread this path, it's useful and practical to think about the image provisionally, as long as we don't become fixed in our images or concepts of what we think this path is. That is, if we don't grasp onto the path as being a certain way with a prescribed route. The map that the Buddha has given us is multidimensional, and it's both universal and individual, based on the conditioning that we each as individuals have to work with. The key to the success in treading this spiral path, which is a process, is an attitude of kindness, openness, receptivity, patience, as well as energy, effort, and communication, concentration. Actually, the folds or limbs or facets of the Eightfold Path tell us a lot about what we are embarking on. So I'm going to have Mokshasi share the screen again, and you'll see a list of these 8 facets of the Eightfold Path. So this path represents the origin of happiness or cessation of suffering, and its first limb, perfect vision or view, includes within it the recognition and knowledge of the Four Noble Truths, which we saw earlier. So it is kind of like an intertwining image, with the Four Noble Truths being the fourth Noble Truth being the Eightfold Path, and the first fold of the path being containing the whole of the Four Noble Truths. Not only that, but perfect vision also includes conditioned co-production, or the Nidana chain. So a whole lot of the Dharma, one could say almost the whole of the Dharma, is contained in that first facet of the first fold of the Noble Eightfold Path. And it influences and is a part of all the other 7. So I'm going to read you a quote by Lama Govinda. One who wants to tread the path of liberation must be conscious of the imperfection of his present state of existence, and must have the earnest desire, the Dharmachanda, to overcome it, as well as a notion concerning the causes of his imperfection and the means how to remove them. So here we have the Four Noble Truths again. This path gives us a glimpse of the truth of our situation before pointing out the practical steps toward the goal of liberation. So the glimpse of truth is where we start, the perfect vision or view or understanding. We can catch glimpses of the light coming from the far distant peak. It might arise in our lives out of a deep experience of beauty in nature, or art, or music, an experience of awe and wonder, a mystical experience. It might arise in meditation, or in a deep conversation with a friend, or in acts of unselfish work or deep thought and reflection. This experience of insight might arise also out of grief and despair, in which we have really come face to face with suffering. It may occur in a dream. Though our consciousness is limited and the full significance of the Four Truths has not yet been realized, the fact of suffering and its causes is so obviously demonstrated in every phase of our life that with observation and the willingness to face our imperfections and our strengths, insight can arise and we can begin treading this path, climbing this mountain, which promises what from here might seem impossible. However it is that this insight arises, it is a significant experience that has the potential to lead to deeper insights that can influence the totality of your life. We know from experience that these momentary experiences are lost and forgotten. We can assimilate and recollect these experiences as a way to keep our hearts open for the possibility of other spiritual insights and for transformation itself. I can recall several incidents that I might describe in this way. One of my most significant meditation experiences was a suddenly finding my awareness more deeply than ever in the depths of my heart, where I was experiencing really painful feeling, painful Vedana. So I stayed there with that feeling in a state of despair and hopelessness almost. And then eventually I had a strong sensation of freedom and happiness in the midst of this very painful sadness. They were both there as an integral part of my experience. Only for a brief moment, the two experiences became like one, and the recollection of it has had an effect on my life. It's influenced my life. It's an image that I can keep coming back to. A confidence in my ability to not be overwhelmed or overcome by strong emotion, and an ability to rely on self-metta, loving kindness. Another, one very different experience was of waking up on a solitary retreat and looking out onto a meadow, wet with dewdrops glistening in the sunshine. And it was as if the trees and the grasses were laden with jewels. It was such a supernatural sight to my mind then that I was transported into a totally surreal state for a moment, feeling the joy and delight without reservation, like I was a bodhisattva walking in that pure land. So we have all had glimpses, I'm sure, of brief moments of being beside oneself with an unusual happiness or a serenity that was beyond our control and beyond our self-concern. It might have been in meditation or in nature, or in the presence of extreme beauty, or perhaps it was a spontaneous response to an experience of friendship or love. Of course, these are not episodes of enlightenment itself, but they are steps along the way and steps of inspiration. So we can see and understand that cessation or happiness is not confined to a state of feeling. It goes beyond feeling as we usually experience it anyway. We could say that we must have a certain amount of faith to begin this path. But this is not blind faith we're talking about. Right from the beginning, the Buddha emphasized the need for introspection and a clear motive for one's actions. He did not want his followers just doing what they were told to do, without their knowing the reason and the necessity, without them having the experience of that. So he would say, come, see for yourself, what is most important on this path is that motive and attitude from which actions are performed. And this attitude must include kindness to ourselves and to others along the way. Vision is the starting point, and it catalyzes the transformation of all aspects of our being. It is also associated with wisdom in its highest form, perfect vision. If one has attained perfect vision, then it is said that one sees reality as it is, knowledge and vision of things as they really are. In other words, we have a sense of the nature of existence. The goal of the Buddhist path is not just insight, though, but it is the growth of our total being. And this is brought out really by looking at the Eightfold Path and the areas that the Buddha wanted to shine light on as far as the transformation that was possible from this perfect vision. So I'm going to read another quote by Lama Govinda. Wisdom in its highest form is enlightenment. But in its beginning, it is the honest striving after truth, the unbiased recognition of the laws of life as far as they are in the reach of average human experience. As such, it's called right views or right understanding. And it is significant for the spiritual attitude of Buddhism that it regards right understanding as the first step on the path of liberation, without which neither morality or concentration can have any value. So you can see how this aspect of the path relates to all of us in the here and now. Wherever we are on this path of striving for a just, humane, ethical, and a healthy life for ourselves and all beings. If someone, like a Buddha, has ascended the mountain peak, at the top, they have an unobstructed view in all directions throughout time and space. For us down at the lower levels of the path, we are just starting to climb. We can see the light, even though we can't always see the peak. And we begin to make progress, breaking through our old habits that cause us and others so much pain. So it's a process. And sometimes the clouds are shrouding the mountain and we lose our way, groping off the path altogether. We may encounter huge boulders that we cannot climb over, and we must find a way around them. But then, just as we reach the depths of our despair and disappointment, and nothing is going right, and we're about to give up, the clouds might suddenly lift, and we remember the light. Remember that experience, that glimpse of insight and inspiration, and our faith returns stronger than ever before. This deepening of faith arises when we allow ourselves to experience suffering even more deeply, and then we can experience its release. It is with this deepening faith that we can get onto the spiral path. Sangharakshita, in his excellent book called Vision and Transformation, he divides the path into two sections, the path of vision, which is the first limb, and the path of transformation, which comprises the other 7 limbs where the vision is carried out. So here's the summary of the limbs or facets of the Noble Eightfold Path. Sorry, Mokshasa, you can put it back. So there are aspects of life and spiritual development that the Buddha was especially interested in shining light on. So our vision and understanding, or our view, forms the basis of the other limbs, which are perfect intentions or emotional engagement. This second one is like the bridge between our views, our vision, and how we're going to put that into practice in our lives. But we have to be emotionally engaged with it in order for it to permeate these other aspects of our lives. So perfect intention or right intention. Many of the translators have used the word right instead of perfect. Perfect is Sangharakshita's translation, and he has reasons for why he has chosen that word. But he is stressing this emotional engagement when it comes to intention. We can't just have an intellectual intention or idea of what we want to do, but we have to come from our hearts with it. And then the third one is speech and communication, which includes thoughts. And the fourth is perfect action, which is ethical action. It's the ethics aspect. Well, all of these from 2 to 5 are the ethics part of the threefold path, which is right below this mokshasi on the screen. If you can make this full screen, I don't know if you can. It didn't. When I sent it to you, the spacing didn't turn out very well. Yeah, so we have the threefold path of wisdom, ethics, and bring it up just a little farther, and meditation. And those you can see, the first limb of the path is perfect vision. Second, third, fourth, and fifth is the ethics part. And then the last two are meditation, cover meditation. So then a part of that ethics part is the livelihood, what we do for our work. And this isn't necessarily just paid work, but it's what we put energy into. And we'll be having a whole session, which I'll be doing actually next month on perfect livelihood. And then the last two, awareness, which includes mindfulness and concentration, which is the meditation act. And sometimes it's called perfect samadhi, the higher consciousness. So this way or path is a cumulative process leading to transformation. And coming back to that mandala that I mentioned at the beginning, you can take these off now. Yeah, thanks. When I was talking about our theme for the year of healing communication, I had thought, well, we could put that in the center of that mandala, healing communication, and then present. We could put that in the center of the mandala and then present a vision of our life as it is in the present, and also one that expresses a coordinated, integrated vision of how we would like it to be. We could use the limbs of the path, those 8 limbs of the path, as prompts for reflection on how we might see refining our views, intentions, speech, actions, work life, effort, awareness, and consciousness. So this might come up later on in our series, this idea of doing this mandala. I'm going to end with another metaphor for the spiritual path that Sangharakshita relates to at the end of his book. And this will be the end of my talk then. Sangharakshita says, spiritual growth is like the development of a tree, a different metaphor than I was using. First, you have a sapling rooted in the earth, and then one day the rain falls, perhaps quite heavily. The rain is absorbed through the roots of the sapling. The sap rises and spreads into the branches or twigs, and the tree grows. There is a pause, and then again the rain falls. Again the sap rises, and this time not only does it spread into the branches and twigs, but leaves begin to unfold. If no rain falls for a time, the tree may wither a little. But eventually, more rain comes. There may even be a real cloudburst, a downpour, and then not only does the sap rise into the branches and twigs and leaves, but flowers begin to unfold. The following of the Eightfold Path is like that. First, there is a spiritual experience, a glimpse of reality, or in other words, a moment of perfect vision. This is like the falling of the rain. And just as the sap rises and spreads into the branches and twigs, so perfect vision gradually transforms the different aspects of our being. Emotion is transformed, speech is transformed, actions and livelihood are transformed, even volitions and awareness. As a result of that moment of perfect vision, to some extent, the whole being is transformed, and the process is repeated over and over again at ever higher levels. So that is the end of my talk. And I have we're going to go into small groups now. Yeah, I'm even a little ahead of myself. That's good. So I have some reflections for you, some suggestions, which I have to get to the stuff on my screen. I'm sorry, I'm just not finding it. I had a little problem today because our printer is not working. Normally I would be printing those things out. Now I'm having to find out. Here they are. Here it is. Well, I'm not seeing them. Anyway, so what I thought we could talk about, I'm just going to come back to you all here, is what any responses you had from the talk, particularly how you might relate to the metaphor of the mountain with the spiral path leading up through it as a metaphor for transformation, or Bante's Sangharakshita's metaphor of the tree. Also, if you had any glimpse of an experience of something beyond yourself, something that you hadn't experienced before, that was a source of inspiration for your spiritual path, for your spiritual life, that you might want to share. Or anything else that just came to mind for you as you were listening to the talk. I think I had a few other things, but I don't know where they are now. So